With that being said, I want to give you, there are three components we're going to hit on this evening. We're going to talk about where we've been in terms of education in our state and certainly our community, where we're going with the Common Core state standards, and we'll conclude with solutions in our community that are going to get you motivated, and we're going to hit on leadership, community, and family support that's going to be needed for us to move this piece forward. And when we say move this piece forward, we're talking about our children, all right? Our whole educational system. This is not above and beyond or apart from OCPS or SCPS or Osceola County Public Schools. As we'll find out from the Department of Education, she is so beautiful and has the most brilliant, bright, white smile. We'll hear from the Department of Education, but first, to talk about where we've been in terms of education, Dr. Bruce Jones is with us. Since 2006, Dr. Jones has served as Professor of Education, Public Policy, and Political Science at the College of Education at the University of South Florida. He holds a lot of degrees. He's been around the world. He's held numerous professorships. Y'all know I make up words every now and then. Professorships and numerous research positions. Dr. Jones's research focuses on leadership and public policy analysis in public and higher education. He's done presentations nationally and internationally. He's published numerous books, chapters, journal articles, as well as lecturing. And he's a powerful man. He's a powerful, brilliant man. I'd like you to help me welcome Dr. Bruce Jones. He's going to tell us a little bit about where we've been educationally. We're going to see a PowerPoint, and then we'll go into that again. Wait until the end for your comments, but start writing down some notes. Dr. Bruce Jones, family.
Thank you, Monica May, thank you so much. And Ali Boswell for having us here. Yes, as Ms. May was saying, I'm from the University of South Florida. I'm a statistician there and do a lot of research all over the United States. And you know, part of our challenge is to keep people excited about data, which isn't, it's quite challenging, yeah. So I'm going to try to do my best to keep everything.
We think of it as boring.
Yeah, in fact, actually one time I did. It's important, it's critically important. So I'm going to talk about, as I was invited here to do so, to speak about the status of African American children. So while I collect data on all kids across the state of Florida, in fact, we compiled a 1,000-page report, 5 volumes, on everything you could possibly want to know about the status of children in this state. But when Isha Haley and Glenn Gilzine invited me to do this presentation, they said, please focus on African American children, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, you ought to know that throughout the state of Florida, African American children, unfortunately, are at the bottom of every single indicator. And Joshua, where are you? You can send that paper around because it's going to take a while to get around. And I'm going to have Joshua Bent send and Kelly too, thank you very much, a paper around to you that speaks to exactly what I'm speaking of. Now, the issue of low African American achievement is an issue that is nationwide. It's a problem everywhere, but it's particularly significant in Florida for a number of reasons, or a couple of reasons. Unlike most states in the United States, Florida is rapidly becoming a minority-majority state. And in fact, if you want to look up an individual who spends his life studying these kinds of trends, Jim Johnson at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He studies this and he talks about African American children and children of color becoming the majority and no longer the minority, and that's a growing phenomenon. He talks about birth rates and everything else that's contributing to that. Therefore, we have to be concerned about the kinds of resource investments that are being made toward African American children. One, because it's the right thing to do, and also two, the state is going to become increasingly dependent on this population, economically, socially, and politically for its survival. Now, Florida is about 40th in this country in per pupil funding at $9,700 per child. So we're almost at the bottom in terms of how we fund education for our children. Also, some of you might know, for a number of years we've been in this lock-up mentality with kids. Everybody familiar with that? Okay, where We're realizing, though, recently that prisons and jails as an alternative to providing quality education cannot stand. It costs in excess of a range of $40,000 to $80,000 a year to lock a person up. I mean, that's almost more than it costs to send a child to Harvard. So this cannot sustain itself. In fact, the United States leads the world in locking its citizens up. So we know that this idea of locking people up is a losing strategy as a means to address whatever social problems that we're trying to address. In fact, I have a quote here from Frederick Douglass, who said way back in the 1800s, he said, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." So we have to work and invest in our children in ways that ensure that they are successful. Now, as a nation, we've seen the reform talk, when people talk about school reform, move somewhat from talking about children as failures. And that's a good thing, because we will put all of that, these kids are failing, they're failing. That talk is moving now to what is it that we can do to help schools as institutions achieve. How can we restructure schools, restructure districts in a way that help children to succeed? So the dialogue is slowly moving in that direction, which is very significant, because we're not talking about children as failures, we're now talking about schools are failing. So that's a different kind of language. And what can we do to help these schools succeed and do what they need to do to help children succeed? Now, this paper that went around to you that was just handed out, it speaks to the number of what's called chronically low performing schools in the state of Florida. Okay? These are the lowest performing schools in the state of Florida. You see on the far left side, there's the counties that are listed. And then there are the schools inside those counties. They are at the bottom in terms of math and reading. Now, in order to be considered a chronically low performing school, you have to fail with an F or a D in math and reading 2 years in a row. So this is the comprehensive list. And I don't know, in Orange County, you see the schools that are in Orange County that are chronically low performing. So you have to ask yourself, what can we do as citizens to work with teachers, work with administrators, work with the school districts, to help in particular those schools, because they are at the bottom. Now there are other schools that are not faring well. These are just the bottom schools, okay? Also, there's a column I want you to look at, is on the far right. Look at that column on the far right. It says percent minority. Read down that list, the percent minority in those schools. Somebody just start calling it out. What's the percentage of minority students in these schools? Just call it out. Come on, let me hear you. Keep going. You get the picture? The worst, lowest performing schools in the state of Florida are minority kids. Now, I think there may be one exception. Well, it's not an exception. I think Volusia has one school where it's 75%. Okay. Volusia is 38% minority? Okay, so that's probably the exception to the rest of the schools. Most of those schools are 100%, 97%, 98%. Something must be done. So when you invite me here to talk about African American children and what the state of African American children is, it's reflected on that paper. The African American children are in the worst schools in this state as far as performance around math and reading, and that cannot continue. All right, now I do have a PowerPoint here that speaks to other achievement indicators. I'll go through it real quick here. Can everyone see that? I can barely see that from here. I think the lights are too high. Can someone turn the lights down a little? I'm gonna skip those. Yeah, that's much better on these old eyes. Thank you. All right, it's getting better. All right, now Orange County, insofar as the number of African Americans, now these are the 7 counties where we have urban leagues. And insofar as the African American population, you see Orange County, how many African American students are in that county. Now Broward has the most, followed by Miami. All right, let's keep going down here. All right, now what you see, even though this data is 2008, 2009, it's still relevant, because when we engage in research and education, it's very seldom that we have the most recent data. We're not going to have 2013 data. You know, it's always going to be a couple of years behind because it has to do with how they clean the data up and when the data becomes available. That's number one. Secondly, this data is not going to radically change between 2008 and today. And what you see here, on one side of that column where it says black children, you see one side, let's go down to Orange County. You see it says 51 there, and then it says 19 where it says Orange County. That means where it says 51%, that means only 51% of the kids, the African American children in Orange County, are proficient in math. 51%. That means, let me do my math, that means 49% are not proficient in math. Now, in order to be proficient, you have to be at your grade level. So if you're in the 8th grade, proficiency means you can read at the 8th grade level, or you can do math at the 8th grade level. So 51% of the students, African American students in Orange County are proficient in math. Now, on that other side, you see the 19? Only 19% of the African American children basically can read in this county. 19%, that they are at their grade level. Okay, that's what you see there. And then you can see, you can compare it to other groups. I mean, if you compare it to, let's say, whites in Hillsborough, you see 51% there versus 18% in Orange County. But with all of those indicators, black children do not pass any other group on any of those indicators, any of them, compared to these other counties. This is the dropout rate. Now, the dropout data here is suspect. I'll say, I hear somebody laughing. It is very suspect. But, you know, as researchers, we have to use the data that we're given. This data comes from the Florida Department of Education. We know the dropout rates are much higher than this. But, you know, but even when you look at what they gave us, you see for African American students, they have higher dropout rates relative to other students. So that, for example, in Orange County, actually Orange relative to the others are not bad. It's 1.7% dropout rate in Orange County. But you know as well as I do, you can go in many local areas, you know the dropout rate is much higher than this. And one of the things that they're trying to do is create more uniform ways across the country of calculating the dropout rate so that we can make some valid comparisons. So I'm going to go on past this. All right, the next one is graduation rates. Now, what percentage of African American students in Orange County graduate? Somebody yell it out. 65%. Compared to, let's say, the white students, what is their rate? Well, white students are in Orange County 82%, and then you see Hispanic 74%, Asian 89%, and so forth. So you see on all of the indicators, we've got issues here to deal with as a community, as an African American community, but also as a community overall. Because in the economy as it's presently configured, this is unacceptable. And also, it's to some degree, it's unethical. It's not moral. It's not right. Because these students are not going to succeed. And that should not represent who we are or what we're about. So just leave you with this data, food for thought. Thank you. I think that's it.
I can't talk in that. Okay. Well, how many educators do we have in our room? Okay. Are these statistics that you were familiar with? Some of you are, hey, my old neighbor. All right, and how many of you were, let me just by show of hands, how many of you were familiar with those statistics? How many of you that are educators was this eye-opening for you? Okay. How many parents do we have in the room tonight? How many of you were surprised by those statistics? Wow. Notice that we don't see that many parents that were surprised by those statistics, and we'll find out why a little later on. In fact, one of the parents, write down for me your comment why you weren't surprised, if I could get a parent to do that. Doctor, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. All right.